Hello and welcome to another riveting episode of Was That in Good Taste? I'm one of your hosts, and my name's going to be Chandler Phillips. And with me, as always, is another one of your hosts, and his name is going to be...
I'm James Beery.
Woo! And before we get into our very special episode of Was That in Good Taste, we're going to ask that you like, comment, subscribe, make sure that all of the good things keep rolling.
This week, we're going to be talking about U.S.-China relations,
Oh,
kind of.
yes. The friends to enemies to lovers to enemies to friends
To
again?
lovers again?
Maybe. The full character arc of emotions. It's a romance for the ages. And I think given a lot of the topical things that are happening, at least with the status of TikTok and just the general political vibe, we're getting back into this is like us dipping a toe back into our political ramblings.
Oh boy. Here we go. Yeah.
I'm pretty excited for it because we got the whole election season. We got like government is actually happening again. Like they didn't just cancel it and then it was like canceled. It was just kind of like postponed for a little bit. Remember when they had the Congress was like, hey, it's almost summer break, and then they were like, you guys can go early.
Oh, I remember that. Oh, yeah.
That's wild.
Sounds like fun to me. I'd like to take a little early break.
I would love to have a job, but that seems like of the jobs to have, that's not a bad gig to be like,
150K a year.
can we just vote to not come into work for the rest of the week? That would be
Who wants to get paid exactly the same but go home early? Say I.
Alright. But yeah, so today we're gonna talk about just a brief overview of how we got to the current status of U.S. China international political relations.
Nothing too heavy.
Nothing too heavy. Just like gonna breeze through it a little bit, just to give a little context, and then talk about like what the implications of the TikTok ban are, what the implications of cyber espionage, because that's been a hot thing lately. Cyber espionage,
Spicy espionage.
it has the most peaking in of the things I've said so far. Cyber espionage. But again, before we get into that, I kind of want to talk about what we're drinking.
What are we drinking
we
today,
got a really
Chandler?
got a really fun cocktail that I honestly don't know if the name is like appropriate for
What I'll say it. It's called a Chinese whisper.
So
Which I'm assuming is just a Chinese person who's like speaking in Chinese going, "Hey, how you doing?" in like a quiet place or something. I don't know.
that's a good guess. Chinese whisper.
Oh no.
It reference like the term. It's kind of like the when we used to not we but like not we but
When
like,
I used to.
like that kind of outdated phrase of like Indian giving.
Oh yeah.
Where
yeah.
it's like that really doesn't connect to what the source material is, but
Wait,
like
is a Chinese whisper like an Irish goodbye?
kinda where so it references the game Telephone, where like there's a group of people
Yeah.
and then one of them whispers a phrase to the next person and then they whisper a phrase to the next person.
The
Then
miscommunication's
the
funny.
miscommunication, and then by the end you're like, well, how did they get to that? So because of like mid 19th century, like as China was trying to become a world power, they were also participating in international espionage and like trying to keep up with the US and the USSR at the time, and they kind of just had a series of fumbles. I'm sure not as many as the CIA
Oh
had.
my God. Is it an insinuation that a Chinese whisper is loud?
No, it's the insinuation that rumors and like secrets are false, like are just like miscommunications. It'd be like, oh, you heard the rumor mill, but really it's just full of shit.
I feel like if you were talking about this in a classroom, it'd be fine. But I think it's very strange for a drink to be named that.
Yeah.
I think
It's-
that's a very strange thing for a drink to be called. If we have any fans who are Chinese who have any knowledge of history, if you want to take a moment and be like, hey, do a little bit of labor and come up with a name for this drink.
There's just a better
You know.
name for maybe.
Oh, but what's in the drink?
So okay, I found this cocktail from a TV series that was in Australia called Danger 5. Have you seen this? Have you heard about this?
Oh, I've only been exposed to it by you like since the first time I've met you.
So one of the reoccurring bits in it is like one of the characters anytime someone dies in his arms, because someone dies in his arms each episode. And then they'll like their dying last breath, so they're whispering a cocktail um into his ear to be like, "Oh, this is my last gift to you." And so one of the episodes they did, they were aiding the Chinese against the imperialist Japanese.
Oh my God, it's
Because
extra.
because it takes place. Sorry, I spit a little.
It's a rock.
It takes place during like a post World War II. Anyway, someone dies in his arms and says what the name, the ingredients for the perfect Chinese whisper, and in the show, it's 1 part rice wine, 1 part lychee juice, pour over crushed ice, top with soda. And I thought, okay, that's cool and whatever, but that also kind of sounds not that great. Not bad, but just like it seems basic. And so I looked it up on the internet, and according to Difford's Guide, they found an actual Chinese whisper cocktail that they got from a 2003 recipe from the OXO Tower Bar in London that features muddled ginger, 2 parts citron vodka, 1 part lychee liqueur, half part lime juice, and a 1/4 part ginger syrup.
Mm.
And so we took a couple liberties, I guess.
I mean, not
suppose.
really. It's effectively the same.
It's effectively
We just
the
didn't
same
use
thing.
fresh ginger because, I mean, we have access to it. We just didn't want to go to the store.
Oh, but we also had from the previous what was it, the midnight oil. We had extra Canton's ginger liqueur, and so we subbed a whole different liqueur in
Yeah.
there.
So we used that liqueur with a little bit of simple syrup to kind of like just lighten it up a little bit. I think it gets kind of the same effect. It obviously doesn't give you the kind of straight up kind of muddled ginger liqueur kind of vibe, but I think it's close.
I was hoping there would be a little bit more of like that kind of robust, earthy ginger spice in there.
I mean,
And-
we didn't garnish it with the ginger. That
Oh,
which is
that
which is a
would've been
which is a big part
Yeah.
of doing it is garnishing it with the ginger because of course if you don't know, garnishing cocktails isn't just for the pretties. Often, especially with things that are very odoriferous, it affects your taste. You know what I mean? So like having a little bit of that ginger, it'll make it so that you taste the ginger more.
How would you garnish it with ginger?
It's interesting. So what I would do is I like ginger candies. I think they're pretty cheap. They're pretty
Ooh.
fun,
Mhm.
and they do have that smell of ginger. And I think that the person would like to probably chew on some ginger, maybe even put it inside of the cocktail.
Oh, okay. I like that. They're doing like the dehydrated. I was thinking you would take like a bulb or something and then like do like one long kind of
It's
continuous
it's like
peel,
it's
and
like
then do, like-
rings.
Yeah.
It's like flat rings actually,
Mhm.
and put on a skewer.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
That's what I was. And then you have like that freshly grated or like freshly sliced ginger that would be very aromatic and effervescent. What are your thoughts, feelings, opinions on the cocktail?
I like it. I think that it has a very interesting, refreshing kind of quality. I love lychee. I have to say, we've been, I don't know if the Gifford's Guide is sponsoring us or something, but, I think we've been finding a lot of stuff there because it's a resource that has a lot of really interesting cocktails. And this is another one that I think that I'm happy to have tried from them. I don't think that I would have thought, even though it's not hard, but it just wouldn't have occurred to me to do the ginger and lychee combo.
It's a pretty solid combo.
It's a great combo. It's delicious. It's a little spicy. It has a little bit of that citrus note, I give it an 8 out of 10. It's very good. And if this was over crushed ice, I think I'd also really enjoy that because this is this is shaken and then strained
Mhm.
and is served neat. I would prefer it over crushed ice. I don't know. That's just me.
So, though I agree with a lot of what you said, I was hoping it would be a tad bit spicier, and I kind of feel like the citron vodka, it helps bridge everything together. You know, it's a pretty decent base spirit to have, but I think this would be a more what's the word? A more appropriate cocktail with if we were to do like a homemade ginger syrup, lychee liqueur, and then the bijou that we had tried last week.
I really wish we had some more of that baijiu, but we drank a lot of it. If you don't know, make sure you check out that episode. Um, yeah, it's wild because I think the baijiu has. I think the weakest part of this is the citron liquor. You know,
Yeah.
the citron vodka, which tastes good.
It
I
just
do
kind
like
of
it.
it just it does exactly what it's supposed to do, but I think it could be supposed to do more.
Got you. I have a drink in my bar that uses oranges, so I use the peel with 2 ginger candies, and instead of using the citron, I use baijiu, and then there we go. Because I think that you get the citrus on the nose.
Mm-hmm.
I think the candy is there for fun, but also having maybe even the orange peel could be caramelized too as well.
Oh,
You know, when a candied orange peel, I think
yeah.
they'd be really nice. So you get that citrus, you get that ginger, and then the baijiu, that strong aroma baijiu, which has that nice little interesting kind of fermented thing in there with the lychee, the
Because
sweetness.
lychee does well with funk.
It does. It does.
That's why you get like lychee that's with passion fruit and like soju and stuff like that. It does really well when you have like that kind of musky, funky, yeasty like lychee really latches. It's a latchy lychee.
It's a lychee. It's good. What do you think? I give it an 8 out of 10. Come on.
I'm gonna say it's like a 7 out of 10 for me, but here's why. I think when it comes to a lot of the um, like lime simple syrup cocktails, the lychee's there. It's what was the one that we did that had creme de cassis a while ago?
Oh, we did a few with creme de cassis. I kind of can't.
Um, but it was one where it was like it was just kind of like your basic run of the mill cocktail that just also had creme de cassis in it, and that's kind of how I feel about this, where it's like it's not bad. Like if I were to see this, if someone were to have this as like an event and they were like, "Oh, we're tray passing cocktails, have one of these," and I got this, I would not be upset by any means. But I think that if I were to order this for like, I want to know what kind of new fun things this bar is bringing to the table, I would be underwhelmed by it. And I think there would be better ways to profile the lychee liqueur or to pair it with things that are a little bit more inventive.
Okay, I'm gonna have to be a little America about this. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
but I think that that's kind of why I was suggesting doing like the candied orange peel and the ginger candies. I think that all it really needs is some kind of adornment to make it seem a little cooler. I think the ginger and the lychee works well.
The ginger and the lychee does work well.
I think that actually, I think the citrus does work as well. You know, I think that you can do that. You can do gin. You know, I think baijiu would be really fun and really funky. I haven't had light aroma baijiu that might be really good.
Or even a shochu, like a rice whiskey.
No, but I think actually it just hit me. Having the baijiu, either the light or strong aroma,
Mm-hmm.
would be great because that's the kind of thing that would elevate this. Because I think that the citrus vodka is too clean, it's too simple, and there's nothing dramatic about it. But when I go to a bar and I see a cocktail, and I think I agree with you. When I look, I see a cocktail and I go, oh, I like lychee, I like all these things, but I look for something with a liquor I've never had.
Yeah.
I look for something interesting. And if you just swap that out, you know, put an orange, save yourself some time, fine. Put an orange wedge or lemon peel, some citrus on the rim or whatever. Get some baijiu strong, or I haven't had any light aroma, but I think that would also be kind of interesting as well, just because it's something that's not traditional.
Do you remember what the other two were?
Yeah, that would be sauce aroma, right? Which is the one that's kind of like soy sauce,
Yeah.
right? And the other one is I think it's
Rice aroma?
rice aroma, which sounds to me a
It's,
lot.
it's rice-aroni. It's
It sounds like it's between light and strong aroma, but I haven't had it. It would also be really fun.
I think rice aroma would do really well with it. Something a little bit starchy, something a little
What
bit
about
like,
a choice? What about a delicious Chinese cocktail that doesn't have a weird name, and then you can choose between one of the 4 different versions of the. If you haven't watched the most popular spirit in the world, the traditional and cultural dish, a liquor of China, baijiu. Wouldn't that be interesting
That
to
would
look at it and be like this?
be pretty neat.
And it'll say saw, and then that way your waitress or waiter could be like, just so you know, you ordered sauce aroma. Most people don't like sauce aroma. I would suggest either light or strong. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Which is fine because there's gonna be people like me. I would go and try the sauce aroma. You would try the rice aroma,
I would try the
and
rice
then
aroma.
we would do a little sippy sip.
And then we would trade these, and we would do the thing where it's like we kind of link
You know,
arms.
just
and
link
do, like,
arms.
one of these. And
I feel like, am I wrong? I feel like having that one distinction elevates this. I like it a lot. I like it a lot.
I think it's a great cocktail. Like I think, again, what we're drinking right now, happy with it. I'm flattered that the lychee liqueur.
You don't
great.
like it exactly the way that I like it, so
I'm gonna undercut it,
I'm gonna
and so that's my assessment. Good stuff. I think we could do more creative things with it, and I think that's kind of like a good assessment of the relationship between the U.S. and the People's Republic of China. Where it's like we're fans, but also we wish we could do more exciting stuff.
When it comes to talking about China, it's not a kind of thing I'm afraid of. You know, I don't shy away from talking about politics, but I think that there is a lot of misinformation about China that's either proliferated by China or by the US
Mm-hmm.
that makes it difficult to kind of know what's happening in places specifically like China and North Korea, right? Where and even Russia, where there is so much misinformation both from their governments and ours that we're not really educated about the kind of things that are happening there, except that now we have the internet.
But the internet can only do so much. So all of this whole discussion, we're going to be trying to be as charitable, equitable as possible, given the cursory research that we have done. But
AKA, warning, we are not, we're not authorities.
we're not authorities, and
If you go somewhere and you're like, well, James from Wasn't in Good Taste said, don't make me get you. I'll pop you in the mouth.
and if we're not doing it right, and you got some better insider not insider information. It's like
if you know more,
if you know more, swiftly correct it.
which
Like,
by
let
the
us
way
know.
is probably everybody. So you know what you do? Leave a comment every time we say something wrong. Hey, drinking game.
Hey,
Was that in good taste? Drinking game. Every time that we misunderstand something or misrepresent something, earnestly take a shot. You'll be drunk in 5 minutes, I promise.
We're gonna have to do like a follow-up episode to this where we just have bottles of liquor that we're just like pounding the whole time. Just like, hey, this is the we fucked up episode, and like, okay, all right, that was for that time, and then here's another that was for that time.
Damn, you know what? That's a good way to take accountability.
Right? Where we just get shit housed. And the entire we can do a repenting for our sins episode.
Oh my god. Oh, I have some stuff.
Oh.
If you like it, make sure you like it.
Oh
comment.
God. All right.
So
let's get into a brief history of the relationship between the modern U.S. industrial complex and China.
So I see your notes,
Mm-hmm.
and I want to put a little like a real prologue, right, or preface before you begin,
Yeah.
which is a lot of the things that we know about China are really a result of a misinformation campaign by any kind of world government, and not in the weird conspiratorial way, in a way that's public, that's open, and that's actually kind of acknowledged by these powers. Uh, when you hear about China, you're gonna be fucking surprised. This
Wait.
man is about to drop because you don't understand. You may, because I think you're a little younger than me, and this is important because when I was a young child, even what I know about China today was never taught. We didn't do any history about China when I was a young child,
You did none of it?
because people forget that the things you're about to say that are common knowledge for some people was not common knowledge until very recently. People knowing and understanding about China is new. So if you are surprised, you don't think you're going to be like, I don't understand. Trust me, very small things, even about the inception of China, about China's early relationships with America, are absolutely different than what I was taught.
Wow. Okay.
So, warning,
Trigger warning.
spoilers ahead.
So, the Western world and its interactions with China go all the way back until like the early, early medieval age, um, even a little prior to that, because of the Silk Road. You can go all the way back to like Alexander the Great from Macedonia, which is like northern Greece ish area. Um, got all the way to India, and like he knew about India and India knew about China, and China had been around for a while. Like they had multiple dynasties up until that time, because that was like the early BCs. And then following that, Rome knew about China because they had the Silk Road. They did a whole lot of trade. And then, like, you fast forward another couple hundred years, and people still knew that China existed. They knew that it was an imperial power. They knew that there were um, imperial forces because of the Mongol Empire, where, like, things, or the Mongolian Empire, where, like, there was always, like, there was potential civilization. Like it wasn't like it was an under civilized place, is kind of what I'm getting at. Is like the West always knew that there were equal foreign but imperial powers that could outperform, or like could compete with the imperial powers of the Mediterranean. However, they were fucking far away, and there were a whole lot of mountain ranges between them, between like the Pacific Ocean and the coast of the Caspian Sea.
But they were afraid.
But they were afraid. There was always this kind of like intrinsic, or not intrinsic, but like due to the Mongolian Empire pushing their borders across Eastern Europe, and then you have the defenestration of Prague.
Wait, defenestration being throwing out of windows.
That's a different thing. Wait, I'm confusing something. It wasn't that. There was someplace in like Eastern Europe. I want to say like the Moldovan, like Transylvania kind of like um, area, like in that kind of like deep Balkan region, where the Mongolian Empire was like besieging some castle, and then they ended up throwing a bunch of like decomposing bodies back into the castle to be like fuck you, and then that's kind of helped the spread of the Black Plague. That was the initial instigation where they were like, we're just going to throw these bodies. And then the bodies had plague. And then the people started catching plague. And then boom, everybody's dying. So there was always this kind of like paranoia of the Far East from the Mediterranean arena.
That's what I. It's interesting because I was kind of inferring that earlier because China being a place that's so far away, before the kind of modern kind of way that we would communicate with letters on ships. Before that, with rudimentary things such as like carrier pigeons. There's a place that's far away that we know, and sometimes people that we know or that we've sent have gone there and have reported back with reports of large, beautiful cities with intelligent people that speak a foreign language. You know what I mean? It was always something that was far away, including the Arabia as well. You know what I mean? The two places, those were the two places I think that were like, and Japan, the three places that are like the most isolated from everything. You know, with while China being uh, on land, surrounded partially by mountains on certain parts. You know,
And
isolating
just
them.
jungle, like
Yeah, in jungle.
deep jungle that's just hard to pass through. And also that like main body of Asia also has like a whole lot of just dangerous predator. Like it's weird to think about how like so much of human travel was dictated by just geography and the potential for predators. Like the fact that there was like tigers and shit in northern India and like Siberian tigers, that's a whole thing. They're just
Absolutely.
fucking tigers just in the snow. Not only are you battling the elements, it's just also something could come out and just eat you. And so for the longest time, a lot of the inter global trade and stuff just happened within the Mediterranean. And then things started kind of branching out and going around the Cape of Africa. And then you have the East India Trading Company. And then things start really getting into the accessibility of China and of the Far East in the 1700s. And we'll talk about like the pirate era where like people like to talk about like, oh, Pirates of the Caribbean, that was like very Spanish, French, and English oriented. But then you got about the piracy era in China as well, and in the South Chinese Sea where like shit is going down, and like one of the biggest pirate lords of the whole pirate era, it was a queen captain of like a whole fucking armada from China.
I mean, I think that the pirate age was so pirate age, like it's One Piece. You know, in
It never ended.
in the eras where there were a lot of pirates and a lot of, you know, like, you know, little groups running around pirating. They interacted with, I guess what you call the Chinese people, very kind of
Kind
more
of
frequently because you're running around and you think you're the only person with a boat who thinks, oh, let me just go this way. You're not, you know, which is actually the kind of thing that a lot of wealthy people, you got to think. You got to think about Europe. You got to think about the French. They didn't continue to grow in power by just staying where they were. That's not how colonialism works.
No.
They were sending people out. They were adventuring and exploring, which is why they're always able to correlate exploring and adventuring with their colonialist project, right? Because it's like, of course, we created this, but not really. It's like you found
You
it.
funded it.
I say they found because they quote unquote found it
Mm.
by traveling there and discovering and finding something new for them. So like it was not new to the world.
You say found, I say funded.
But it's true.
Like they were just paying the check to
It's
have
true.
other people go do shit for
It's true.
them.
They were spending money to send people places. And so, of course, if you're sending people places, there are going to be people like, oh, there's a trade route. Somebody's going over there, bringing back a lot of money. because the person that's going to China bringing back these kind of like interesting statues or drawings or things that are very foreign, that
Silks,
silks. It's
tapestries.
almost like there's a road where there's lots of silks that would lead to people preying on it, perhaps because it's vulnerable.
Especially if there's like, some sort of network or like secret underground web, like a dark web
If only,
that had this like road of silks.
if only.
It'd be wild.
And it's crazy because I know that the isolationist tendencies of some of these countries can be very effective, but always tradesmen, tradeswomen, tradespeople are always the one to engage with them first,
Because that's where the money is.
because absolutely the person to go and travel into the quote unquote Orient, which is the term they used to use back then, that
In context of like Orientalism, where we picture like the Far East as being like so wholly different from Western culture, the fact that like there's this kind of intended marketing of China and of Southeast Asia as being like, this is a place that is so different from Europe and from the West that they are essentially commodities,
Mhm.
and it's a dehumanizing.
yeah, it's important to mention because it's
the
like it's
what
like the people, they're like, we're going to the Orient and we're going to, and then they make a trade route, to a place that's people just live somewhere else and it's far and they have different things and they use it like a commodity,
Mhm.
and it becomes something that's important to them.
For the purpose of extracting wealth and goods from. And I think that's kind of a fundamental issue that America has with our relationship with China, is that we rely on this like historic, or not historic, but like this kind of foundational language and idea of the Far East being like this land of exploitable resources, that it's inherently paranoid inducing to think that they are in competition, like that those are sovereign entities that are in economic competition with the West, and there's like this kind of superiority complex that comes when talking about China, especially in the US, because we've had this historic uh, discourse around the Far East that essentially frames it as a place that's for the taking. And
And that continues today.
yeah,
That absolutely continues today. You know what I mean? And of course, I don't want to sound like I don't know, because I'm not an enemy of the Chinese people, right? So I don't want people to
maybe by the end of the
right. I'm not their enemy, but at the same time, I want to make sure it's clear that I'm not like an apologist for some of the Chinese. Uh, some of their political positions have been to do the kind of colonialist kind of projects that are similar to what Europe has done. And the growth of China China has tripled in size. I think it's been since I don't
what are they taking, gas station pills?
I know, right? Oh my God, they're uh, the Chinese government, and of course this is a colonial thing. They spread and they've taken over, even in the last 70 years, the smaller countries that are near them, and have kind of assimilated them into, you know,
One China.
one China. I don't know if we're I don't know if we're gonna get to the whole Han Chinese thing, and how, a lot of but these things that are bad aren't the entire history of China. And that's the thing, because when we're talking about the exploitation of China, people will be like, but China does, and it's like,
Yeah, but should anyone be so to rewind briefly, it all kind of started with like the whole Marco Polo thing during the age of exploration. That was like 1600s, I guess. and ends up in China, discovers noodles, and is like, these things are great. I'm bringing them back to Italy. There's a whole Netflix series about it. Bing, bang, boom. Europe knows that China has resources and civilization and technology that is potentially exploitable for the West. Um, and then the transatlantic trade happens. And so Europe kind of fully turns its attention on extracting everything it can from Africa and putting it in America so that they can extract more shit from North and South America. And so that's the game for, for like 200 years. And then they started being like, "Hey, slavery kind of not cool anymore. So we're going to have to find a new continent to exploit." And so then you get to like 1944 is like the first major, like, the US is doing imperialism now, but like outside of just its general hemisphere. And that's the Treaty of Wangjia. I think I'm pronouncing that.
And that's if I'm correct, that's the first treaty that China engaged in with Europe. I'm trying to remember.
With the West.
With the West. I
Period.
didn't say Europe. That was, like I did.
So like there had been like previous like a couple interventions here. Like, you know, the Dutch had gone to Japan, and like the Portuguese had set up stuff in China, and like England had done stuff in Hong Kong. So there was like the vultures were circling around China near the end of the the Qin dynasty in 1940s. And then what's called the first major unequal treaty imposed by the U.S. on China, which it just gave U.S. preferential treatment as a trading partner to China, and was one of those like, hey, you should trade with us or else. And China's like, what do you mean or else? And we're like, well, because, you know, we do weapons really good. And China's like, but that we don't want to fuck with that. And then the US was like, you saw what we did to Mexico, right? Like, we just had our Mexican American War, and that was like bad. You don't want to fuck with that.
Who created gunpowder?
China. But they did it for fireworks, and we did it for guns. So like the guns, like they weren't killing people. They were killing people. Like, I mean, they're still doing imperialism. Like they still fucked on everyone around them and like could wage like full on ground wars. But the U.S. was like, hey, we can mobilize hard
I guess that's technically imperialism.
Yeah, because they're still like they were doing like Russia style imperialism. Like Russia wasn't sending out colonies; they were sending out like just fucking battalions.
Yeah.
And so that was the first like major treaty, and I think one of the big things was it gave U.S. extraditional privilege as well. So like if there were some Americans fucking around in China, they can get just like plucked out and extradited. And that's kind of a weird flex to have on another country, where you're like, hey, we're gonna deal with them internally. If they're acting out, just send them back. And because like otherwise it's kind of like saying like our people in your country don't have to listen to what you say, they have to listen to what we say. And we're going to encourage them to behave, but they don't have to because they're special. Like,
I mean, that's what happened in Japan, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And you got Europeans running around Japan, you know, becoming feudal lords just because they're European, you know, becoming lords and just running around doing whatever they
rolling
wanted.
in with a bunch of money and weapons and power, and then now they're doing whatever the fuck they want. So oh no. So
you knew it was going to happen.
This goes on for a while. And then later in the 1800s, there's the Boxer War. And so this is when a bunch of villagers in North China just were like, yo, what the fuck? Guys, why do we have a bunch of like foreign powers starting to just carve us up? Like we're China. We're kind of the shit. Remember the dynasties? We got the Great Wall. It's not a good wall. It's the Great Wall. And so then there's a whole rebellion, feudal uprising,
The Boxer Rebellion.
the Boxer Rebellion, in which a bunch of peasantry started just fucking up a whole lot of imperialist batteries and like ports, and all the little strongholds that Europe had, that even Japan had, and that the U.S. had in China, and the empire at the time, the was it the Qin dynasty? I don't know who it was at the time.
I don't know.
They were just like, hey, whatever happens, happens. And then they started actually aiding their peasantry as well in their rebellion. So they were like, oh, looks like something's going down. Looks like someone's getting empowered. And so that was like the initial stance. That was the fight back.
Because if I remember correctly, I think that I can't remember exactly the leadership, but when the Boxers were rebelling, originally they didn't have support, and then it was like, oh, well, actually, you know what? This imperialist forces that are trying to come in are really bad. So even though these people were doing like effectively a lot of harm, like it's a lot of it's a rebellion. It's stuff is up right, and they were like, you know what? Actually, this is right.
But it does set it up so that like the royalty and nomads, or not nomads, the nobility of China recognizes that the working class, the peasantry, the serfdom in China is capable of overthrowing predatory overseers and rulers and stuff like that. And so that rolls over into a civil war within China, and shit's popping off. And the U.S. is kind of like, oh no, we kind of got our shit rocked by just a bunch of peasants, and we're going to kind of double down on just like doing stuff within Latin America and World War I and all that stuff. Bang bang boom, World War II breaks out in the middle of China's civil war. And then Japan starts invading China, doing all that shit. Like that's a whole other thing. Like that's guys.
Cursory.
It's bad. Like war crimes, plenty. It's
I mean, if you're
so
doing
many.
war,
If you're doing war,
you're doing crimes.
you're doing. Hey, don't do the crimes if you can't do the war. So at this time, the U.S. is like, all right, we're gonna ally with the Republic of China now because Japan did Pearl Harbor, and Japan did a bunch of other like kind of worse, like a lot of worse stuff, worse than Pearl Harbor to China.
I don't want to be the Japanese apologist. Politics are complicated and not good. And America, you know, we got our lick back. So
Mm.
the United States got its lick back. So I don't know how bad Japan was.
There is also a whole lot of shit going. Like China and Japan had a whole will they won't they in Korea at the time too. Like that was a whole ordeal. Like just of like a century or two prior. Like there were still people alive during World War II who had seen shit go down in like Korea during just a few years prior, or not a few, like I don't know, like maybe 50 years prior. I guess that was like shit, the 1700s.
God.
So there had been a whole tit for tat thing, and ugh, war crimes are bad.
War crimes are bad.
So anyway, U.S. allies with the Republic of China against imperialist Japan during World War II. The Republic of China is nationalist. Japan is fascist. So it's kind of, you know, you know,
The same.
the same, but not entirely. Like one's really doubled down on it. And so that whole thing hashes out. They do World War II, theater in the Pacific, yada yada yada. You know, America being the only country to actually drop bombs on a foreign um, sovereign nation, they do all
Bombs.
that. Atomic bombs,
The biggest, baddest bombs of all time.
the worst bombs, the most lethal bombs to have ever been dropped. America did that for China.
I don't want to be taken away.
They said, "Hey, China, we're doing this for you."
But I'm just saying, if you want to think about why relations have so strained with China, just imagine if you really feel like the nice guy, like you dropped 2 atomic weapons on 2 of the most populated cities in Japan, and she talks back.
Listen, if you murder her ex and bury the body, and she doesn't worship the ground you walk on, then kind of toxic.
It sucks because I think all these countries have done and continue to perpetuate such terrible, terrible things. But it's really hard to beat just like, everybody racing to find the most dangerous weapon and then like not only getting there, but then using it. It's really it's
In their defense though, they did drop pamphlets like 15 minutes prior.
huh.
They did drop little flyers in
Wow,
English.
that's interesting. I wonder where that's been happening recently.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow, that's
They did
interesting.
say like hey, by the way,
Hey, people
hey.
who live on the side of a mountain, and in order to travel anywhere, it takes like kind of not
They said,
they got cars and
"Newsflash,
stuff.
Bucko."
Hey,
Hate to drop the bomb on.
if you're wealthy and you have a car, you might be okay. If you're a poor farm folk, you might as well just get your skin sloshed off.
If you can't read, that's not going to be a problem in the next 20 minutes.
God,
Hmm.
and it sucks because you look and you think about America's interactions with China and how absolutely, America is obviously engaging always in like this like weird propaganda campaign against China that's very aggressive, right? And so it's like a back and forth thing. The United States government tries to make sure that the people who live within its borders know that people in China are both an extreme danger to them and also live in like wood huts and don't have technology. They,
It's almost like the formula for fascism is to both paint the enemy as entirely incompetent and also disastrously dangerous.
it's like, hey, the people in China, they all live and they all like herd sheep and all their cities are empty and falling apart. But also, they are an intrinsic threat to you, your way of life, and actually you personally.
So going back to the history, cut to end of World War II. The UN Security Council has the big five. We got England, France, Russia, US, and China. And we're the big five of the Security Council. If shit's going down anywhere in the world, you bet your bottom dollar that one of those five, at least 3 of those 5 are rolling up. It just so happens around this same time, the People's Republic of China established, or like the Communist Party of China ousts the former Republic of China government, and then the People's Republic of China is established by Mao Zedong in 1949.
I'm not a Maoist. I ain't got nothing to say.
And so the former government, the ROC, fled to Taiwan. At this point, the U.S. is like, oh fuck. Well, technically, we supported the government that is now being ousted by the communists, and also we don't want to fuck with communism. And so the US then does like a whole 180 on China as a government entity because they're siding with their nationalist um, former government that has now fled to Taiwan. And so that's kind of what starts the whole fucking Korean War was there was the whole like dispute over does Taiwan belong to China? Is Taiwan its own sovereign entity, or is it the republic? So the stance, from what I understood from the research, and again, correct me if I'm wrong. I the chances of this research being just not super thorough. The U.S. supported Taiwan as it was supporting the Republic of China, and in a way that said like, "Hey, Taiwan is not China, but the people who run China, the rightful government of China is in Taiwan, and so we'll help them while they also established a governance in Taiwan." So it's like you back the losers and then the losers left, and so then you backed the losers against a lesser opponent, I guess. Like, so then there's the whole dispute over like whether or not is Taiwan a part of China, and that's a whole fucking thing. Cause that's a whole fucking thing. Um,
It's a whole fucking thing, including the fact if you include that the main way that China has gained land is by, taking over effectively these smaller countries that you've probably never heard of and that I don't know the name of because it's been.
I haven't heard of them, but you know them. You just don't know the name
I
of
know,
them.
right? It's because they've been erased from history effectively by, that's why, again, if you look at China and you see the issue with the Uyghur Muslims as an example, right? It's like, huh, there's such a diverse amount of people who lived on that continent. But the Han Chinese, if I'm correct, I believe the whole philosophy of China is that everybody in China is Han Chinese. But that really, and then lately in the last few years, China's been doing propaganda like, oh, we have an indigenous population that still exists, and it's like, does it exist, or are you using this politically to make yourself look good when really you took them over? It's all the same, kind of everywhere. Every country does this. This is not new. This is not.
What's how would they describe the camps? Because how different is a camp from a reservation?
In this case, I don't know. I think because in the United States of America, reservations are protected by law. Not that helps all the time, but them
They're
being
protected by law, but not supported by law.
being protected has allowed for some very big burgeoning communities.
Yeah.
Whereas in China, they've effectively, they just got rid of their cultures and then they pretend that it's cool and that they're all one cool community.
I'm the only point I'm trying to make is that it's cool or it's not cool. It's not cool.
It is cool.
It's never cool.
It's the coolest.
Internationally speaking, it's okay when the US does it in the 1850s. It's a problem when China does it
I was about to say, is cool when they do it.
It's a problem.
It's a problem when I do it.
Fuck.
Fuck them.
Don't do imperialism, guys.
I mean,
Moral of the story: imperialism bad, colonialism not good. It's also bad.
we always speak about this though from like a Western perspective, right? Because if you think about it, right, it's like, oh, all these Western countries, the West was like, oh, there's a place and they have infrastructure. You think they weren't over there like, oh, there's a place, they have infrastructure. They aren't like the people on the outskirts of our town that like, we shoo away, who don't speak our language, and sometimes we kill them because they're effectively animals to us. There's a place far away that also has power.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And then I do think the thing about the colonialist project is that in order to take the land, you got to know about it, right? And there are places and countries where they were more concerned about defending themselves and protecting their homestead, that they weren't so much thinking about like going 1,000 miles, maybe a few hundred, maybe 1,000, but not 100,000, not 1,000,000. So effectively, whoever's the first to do that, would gain more knowledge. But then when you meet those people, you go, oh, there's a person who thought something I didn't think, and now you're in kind of a Cold War, right? Where the minute you meet someone who has the ability to get to you, and maybe you have the ability to get to them, but you haven't considered getting to them.
Right.
You know?
You've just considered, like, how do I best outcompete my immediate neighbors?
Now there's a whole new person.
And now your neighborhood is expanding.
The colonial project I think, is terrifying, and I think that it's had such a negative influence on these places. And when we look at, so like, when you look at, first of all, what communism is and the way that it works is important because it was mentioned, right?
What is communism, James?
Oh, right. Don't do that to me.
What is communism?
Wait, specifically, what I was going to talk about is the way that it happened in the USSR, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because effectively, actually, they hated communism.
Yeah.
Everybody kind of hated communism.
Everyone fucking hates communism.
The Nazis hated communism.
Nazis super hated
They named themselves socialists intentionally so that they could spoil people from the idea of the kind of philosophical idea. I don't know shit about communism and socialists like a professor, but I know enough that like the Nazis literally named themselves because they hated communism.
So if communism
is
like feudalism 2.0,
then why do I have a place to live?
Well, and capitalism is like mercantilism 2.0. So one like kind of expands its borders to immediately extract the resources, but kind of needs to consistently expand its immediate borders. Whereas capitalism and also mercantilism has to establish like these nodes of influence.
Well, okay, the thing,
one works on a network, and it's almost like, okay, think about it like wiring in parallel versus wiring in series.
Okay, this is complicated because I think that when it comes to talking actually about, because if you're going to talk about China, you're going to talk about communism, right?
But it's not.
You're going to talk about socialism, but like they're not really doing communism, because what communism is like a philosophical concept that's good. Because concepts aren't really, if the concept is meant to be good, then it's meant to be good. So communism on a piece of paper is a good thing. Communism has never existed ever once in the planet. It doesn't matter if somebody's called themselves a communist, right? They're not exactly transferring what's on that piece of paper into reality. They're implementing things from socialist and communist philosophers and ideologues into the way that they live. So like there's never been a communist country because there's never been a country to do the ideological philosophical concept of communism in practice.
So it's kind of like communism is like hentai, but like capitalism is like
This is good. I'm on the edge of my. This is good. This is good.
It's kind of like oh, I lost it. Like kind of like just your average everyday like like the reason being communism doesn't have a space squid to fuck the MILF, whereas capitalism would just have like your average everyday gangbang.
Oh, oh my God! This is a good example. It's
But
like how
both of them look good on paper.
people always refer to like it's like the way porn can be harmful. It's like porn is not harmful, but like extreme porn can like desensitize people, and like there are
Mhm.
concepts and things in porn that obviously do not happen in real life,
Mm-hmm.
but the things in porn are closer in life than a movie about people who but and this is not to say that you can't do this because you could, but like since this is not the world we live in, one is a movie that's like kind of dramatic and kind of reminds you of your life, and the other one is kind of science fiction to you.
Yeah.
You know what I
Okay,
mean?
that's kind of what I was going for.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
One is science fiction, but in the sense that, like, okay, in theory, on paper, everyone wins. But in application, someone is being exploited.
Well, at, well, that's the problem, and that's why the this is like a whole. This is like it's very complicated. This is why it's so contentious between the U.S. and China when it comes to individuals, not the political parties. When it comes to individuals who go to school and who are professors, the anti-communist rhetoric, the anti-socialist rhetoric is nonsense because really the people who call themselves these things never ever actually or even trying to represent even the philosophical on paper nothing, right? Also, if you're a person who lives in the modern age and you're using somebody's book from 400 years ago to put your to like be your moral guide.
Are you talking about the Communist Manifesto?
Well, here's the thing. I'm not an anti. First of all,
that was only like 150 years ago.
it was, but
That was not 400
no,
years ago.
It wasn't. But one of the things about it is, if you everybody talk about Marx and Engels, yes, okay, but they lived in
1984 just happened.
they live in a
okay?
different world than us, and the world they live in, since it's different than ours, we have to approach these things differently. Not that because philosophy, that's what philosophy is,
Yeah.
right?
Ever
It's not about the book or the philosophy. It's about you. And if you as an individual are sitting there pulling out a book from 200 years ago and you're like, this exact book, the way that it says is the way that I should live, then you're wrong. But the philosophy of socialism and communism is not wrong. But like the words are tainted, so let's just throw them away. And instead of using those tainted, boring words that are associated with ideologues that do bad things, even if they don't do the, then just away with the bathwater, and you can literally use the same kind of ideals with a new name.
That's actually what the song "Tainted Love" by Depeche Mode was about.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I was gonna do it. You did. I'm sorry, I didn't mean
No,
to step
go
on
ahead.
it.
You got it. You got.
Damn it! I stepped on it.
I feel I've got to run away.
I've got to. Yo, man, that's crazy. It was so good. It was so good. And the only reason I'm passionate about that is because like it's very interesting because I guess in the U.S. now, when you're like if you're kind of youngish or if you have like really progressive politics, you call yourself a leftist, right? But like, yeah, that's like interesting and like weird, I guess, because some leftists call themselves like I know Maoists. I met people who are Maoists, and it's like, how are you? Like, that was so long ago.
As a radical leftist, I like to identify as a southpaw.
You have to when engaging with politics.
That's a funny boxing joke.
It is though, but I don't know. Listen, what am I gonna do? Am I gonna laugh for you? Come on.
No,
I left it open for them.
It was just for them.
Did you see that I paused?
It was for me and them to have.
I paused so that you had a laugh break.
Oh,
It's very hard because one of the big issues, one of the big things between America and China is that America is so anti-communist that they're literally mad at someone who does not do communism. China does it doesn't matter what they call themselves. They do hypercapitalism. Okay? They engage in hypercapitalism. They saw it and they were like, actually, you know what? Yeah, like, first of all, because again, in case you don't actually know, socialism is meant to be the transitionary period between whatever era you're in and the communist era, in which when you're a communist, it's meant to be like everything's equal, everybody has everything or whatever. And that is the kind of thing that exists, but it's meant to be kind of an ideological like thing, right? Socialism is the in-between point, okay? These guys were looking at socialism. They were maybe socialisming, okay? They
Yeah.
weren't even being socialists.
They dabbled a little
Okay,
bit.
they looked and they were like, well, maybe sometimes we can support people. And these other countries and stuff saw, the people in power saw.
They said if we can maintain the illusion of being communist, we could better do capitalism. Huh?
So all these places, they're not doing any kind. All they're doing is engaging in imperialism. All they're doing is doing. All they're doing is, God, I forgot. God, I'm a goddamn colonialism. You know, they're engaging in fascism, imperialism, colonialism, and at the end of the day, for what? For nothing. When people on the ground are screaming for, we want socialism. Socialism, because it's a word and the way we operate, we use things to frame ideas, right? But like people are so stuck that they're dumb. These concepts are the best in the world, and when you break them down to actually their most rudimentary parts, they are the best philosophies. The philosophy where everybody gets everything, everybody's happy, everybody gets to live safely and securely is the best ideal. And anybody who argues against wanting to do the best thing for everybody is the wrong person. But the person who says, "Hey, we do the best thing," but actually they're lying to you, is probably also maybe worse.
But our government tells us that we do the best thing.
Oh, damn. Every country does.
Man.
Every country does.
Every country
and
thinks
that's the
that they're
problem.
doing it the right way. Well, okay, so we'll bring it back to it's not that China's communist is not the beef that we have with China.
No.
The beef that we have with China
That's the made up beef.
Is that because they pretend to be communist, places near China also picked up on it, and that was financially disadvantageous for the U.S.
Also, if you were an American citizen and you hear about a place really far away, there's like a joke made in F is for Family by Bill Burr on Netflix. And they, of course, because when it takes place in the 70s, right, even at that time, people knew that China existed. People knew about Chinese people. Chinese people lived in America, but like a lot of people didn't. And I remember he made a comment about like how, they have fancy toasters and stuff. And, this is cracking a joke, same kind of joke we make about Japan. Like, they have fancy things. And it's like, listen, people have always been jealous of these people that they don't know, right? People have always just been uneducated by people that are like really far away. And we live in an age where there's literally another country that absolutely has the root. I don't know how to do the math. They have 1.5 to 1.8 times the amount of people we do. Okay? They have cities, okay, that dwarf in size New York City by like times 4. Okay? They've spent trillions of dollars. Does that mean that they're free of any of the bad things? No, it doesn't. But also, it's weird, like, because these Chinese cars is a good example. Like, maybe the Chinese cars aren't the best fucking car in the world, okay? But they're at least really, really good because they have cutting edge technology, okay, in China. They have the cutting edge technology in Taiwan. This is why the war around and everything around Taiwan still exists, is that semiconductor and CPU production happens at the TMSC factories in Taiwan. And when you use your computer it'll say made in Taiwan. And so Taiwan is the most influential it, parts manufacturer outside of China and the Congo inside of electronics. We literally live in a world where the absolute, you want to talk about the future, robots literally zooming around in the ceiling, doing micron accurate laser precision to make sure that you can use your iPhone. But yet, we think that people in Taiwan know nothing, and we think that people in China, which as we've spoken about, because obviously the tie in the history that they're not we the correlation is absolutely there that the people in China who are doing the same kind of things and have been doing the same things for a long time and have these big infrastructure so much that our manufacturers started cutting money by not only using their labor, but people forget. And this is a lie. It's not just that they have cheap labor, is that they have some of the best equipment and some of the best methodology. So we say that it's because the people over there aren't making anything, and that can be true. Obviously, that happens a lot. Suicide nets outside of,
I was gonna bring
you
that
know what I
up.
mean.
was like,
That's obviously
but,
very
like,
true.
the
But also the biggest manufacturers with the highest safety ratings, the highest and biggest and most technologically advanced, factories in the entire world. Oh, but magically,
but their city red light traffic cameras can have facial recognition. And how am I supposed to disobey traffic laws if they could recognize me?
you know,
Listen, the law is much like a traditionalist baseball game. It's not about what's illegal and not illegal. It's about what the umpire sees. And it's not fair that they started implementing like instant replay in baseball, okay? And it's the same goddamn thing where it's like, yeah, I know Angel Hernandez made a bad call, but I'm not going to spend 20 minutes watching and rewatching whether it's a strike or a ball. It's his call to make, and if he's a bad umpire, that's the freedom of the pitch.
God, I had so much stuff to say. I had way too many things to say. God dang it.
Do we have to wrap up? Do we start?
We're over time.
We're over time. Oh shit!
And there's
Okay.
stuff about there's things that
So okay, do you think we're in a new area of cyber insecurity?
I feel like we have to do a whole episode around this, but the answer is yes and no. The reality is that this is what I'm educated about, and you've never been secure that way. You've never been secure that way, But I think you're talking about specifically cyber espionage. And so all I have to say is you can do a little research yourself. Obviously, China is seen by most security researchers to be the number one country to be engaging in cybersecurity, like really just like spying on us, with the number two country being Russia.
Hey, if you ain't playing to win, are you even playing?
Specifically on China, specifically when it comes to China and TikTok. These researchers are finding, these independent researchers are starting to find that Russia is the one engaging in the most propaganda on TikTok. And if you're listening to this, you're like, oh my god, I can't believe he's saying this. Meta, aka Facebook, yeah, maybe one of the reasons they changed their name is not just because they decided to do something different. Maybe they changed their name because attached to the Facebook brand is things like the fact that Russian bots were absolutely engaged in the 2016 election, which is why Trump was saying it all the time. But the bots weren't really for Trump or for Clinton as much as they were engaging in whatever's pro-Russian, okay?
Distortion.
It's distortion. So, but yes, when it comes to espionage on a global scale, China is number one. But I want to give some context.
Can
I know,
say
right?
that one more time?
China is number one. But I want to give some quick context in that I mean, they're number one in espionage, but when you want to come into destabilization, USA, USA. You know what I mean? It's like I want to ask a serious question of the audience, and this is hard, but I want you to really dig deep inside of yourself, right? If somebody was running around destabilizing just any country that they wanted to make them do what they wanted, wouldn't you be a little spy baby? And that doesn't mean that they should. It doesn't mean that the way they do it's right. It doesn't mean any of those things. But when it comes to talking about politics, you have to understand that these things do not happen in a vacuum. Things don't just happen. October 7th didn't just happen. You know, Palestinians didn't just attack Israelis. Israelis didn't just, the country Israel didn't just decide to blow up Palestine. And then before the Nakba, Israel didn't just decide to, that's not how it works, right? History doesn't work that way. History is a series of connecting and complicated things that give context, right? Which is why the Israel thing is because, like, all the things that happen, it doesn't matter who started it first. A bunch of people are dying. Somebody's in control.
I don't care who started it. I'm going to finish it. God damn it.
You know what I'm saying? But, not everything is the end of the world. Not everything is in that kind of instance. China has made it kind of clear, if you pay attention to politics, that they're trying to make their money. They want to be part of the global community. Russia is doing their thing because Russia and China get correlated a lot. But the difference is that the leadership in Russia is doing what they're doing in Ukraine. And yes, China doesn't think with things with the Uyghurs and stuff, but we did that in the U.S. too.
China also had a whole thing with Hong Kong. Remember that?
Of course, but that's all similar to U.S. Think Puerto Rico. Think Hawaii. Think Seneca Village in New York City. You know what I mean? Like paving over, indigenous communities, neighborhoods, and taking over places that are directly connected to you. China,
but that was Hong Kong. That was like if they just decided to pave over like Philly.
They didn't,
or like Boston.
Well, they didn't pave it over. They just have the majority of political control in the country. Come on.
Oh, okay. Well. All right.
Okay, I go.
A couple more questions. China has a one-party system. The U.S. has a much more fair, equal, and equitable two-party system. Which do you think is better?
I mean,
is it better to have one or two?
I mean, Hong Kong is interesting because Hong Kong has like a parliament, and while China doesn't have the majority, their influence affects the other parties, so they kind of effectively have an influence, priority. I think that all hail China.
So the U.S. has two parties. One's called the Democrats and one's called the Republicans. One of them says that people should live in homes. The other one says that if people don't live in homes, they should cease to exist. Which one is right?
I think that if you don't have a place to live, you should find one. I don't understand why you can't just pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Oh, you don't have shoes?
One of them
shoes.
One of them says like, "Hey, we want poor people to stop being poor," and the other one says we don't want to have poor people anymore. Which one's better?
Are the poors in front of my penthouse?
Not in front of your penthouse, just in front of your like family-owned business.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Ugh.
No. If they're in front of your penthouse, they will be swiftly.
Yeah, I'm about to say, like, in front of my penthouse, I wouldn't even live there.
No,
obviously.
Yeah, no, they're not in front. They're just in front of the one means of income that you have sunken your entire sense of self and also all of your credit into. And like, if it doesn't work, then you might actually end up being the person who's actually there that you then need to get rid of in order so that you can make money.
I don't know if you know this.
Yeah.
But I make $1 million a year. And 600,000 of that goes into the land and property taxes that I have. I'm pretty wealthy.
600,000?
I mean, the Democrats, every cent,
Wow.
every cent.
So that means you only have $400,000 a year to just have for yourself.
Well, I have to pay for my kids to go to like the schools where the uneducated people aren't.
Well, and you also probably have a boat.
A boat. I don't even ride them motherfuckers. And I have a guy who lives on each one just to clean it. But I go to each one to make sure that they're just sitting there not using it.
That is just, it's got its spot and it doesn't have any barnacles on it.
What do you mean you didn't clean the barnacles of my boat yesterday? Your daughter was sick? Your wife has cancer?
You're wasting all me money. Gug, 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 gug. What do you think it's cool? What do you think is cooler? The Forbidden City or Mount Rushmore?
God damn it.
This is the last one. This is the wrapping up question.
I feel like because I'm wearing all these things with
one is a entire excavated ancient burial ground full of fully carved terracotta army, and the other is 4 big dudes in a mountain face.
Hold on. I need to know something though.
Yeah.
Was that place was Mount Rushmore a place that had any kind of value to any people? Would you say that they were perhaps native people to whom that land could have been important? Perhaps even, what would you call it?
Sacred?
Sacred? Would you say perhaps that there are people who were like, whoa, why did you carve big faces into my? Is that a thing? Is that possible?
Actually, no one knows. No one knows the answer to that.
No one knows,
and it's lost. It's been lost to time.
To be honest, if I knew that like indigenous people died either making it or were displaced, then it'd be hot.
No one knows.
It'd be hot.
Oh wow, that's crazy. How we could know? Like we could know.
I could just look it up, but I'm not gonna.
But like, it's
Mount Rushmore is the place.
It's so crazy how like we could know, but anyone who would know isn't like around.
It's crazy because I really don't want to sound like fucking crazy, like because I don't support no fucking country. But I'm just saying, if you were to be like Terracotta Army versus like the Golden Gate Bridge, the Terracotta Army is like so cool. They have one that wasn't destroyed because, like, you know, there was like, and there was
a fuck ton of them.
Yeah, and a bunch of them got destroyed and stuff like that. Guess what?
Yeah.
There was one that was found not destroyed. One.
Just one guy?
Just one. That's cool.
Wow.
That's like so cool, man.
Okay, what about like Terracotta Army or like 6 really cool bridges?
Okay.
One of them's not even a functional bridge, it's just kind of an archway. It's like a half a McDonald's kind of thing.
In Taiwan, Obama went to like a restaurant and had some food with Anthony Bourdain. Terracotta Army. Stool that's covered in plexiglass that Obama sat in on an episode of Parts Unknown with Anthony Bourdain.
That's pretty dope.
That's it.
That's pretty dope.
Oh, God.
Well, I think that might wrap it up for us. We kind of put a bow on it.
I got a lot of stuff to say, but you know what? It feels like we're going to have a comeback.
We're going to have a wraparound.
It feels like what's going to happen is that we're going to end up coming back and we're going to talk China, TikTok,
and maybe an improvement on our Chinese whisper.
We have to talk. I feel like the TikTok thing is a whole episode.
Oh, God.
But you know what? That's easy because you can always find me talking about that kind of stuff at tiktok.com/ or just search living_dad_joke in the comment description. You can find me on Instagram under the same name and on twitter.com as at What Funny Friend. Where can they find you, Chandler?
You can find me on both Instagram and TikTok at Chandler Does Jokes.
Are you
That's
going to
it.
post something on fucking TikTok?
Maybe.
Interact with me, damn it.
Eventually.
God damn it. Guess what?
We'll get there.
Um,
Hey, we're all growing at our own rates. And sometimes we're a beanstalk, and sometimes we're Stardew Valley.
you said it all. Damn. Remember, drinking is not required.
But it is recommended.
Do you think people are going to think that I'm a China shell because of the hat?
Oh,
Because
obviously.
I didn't get the chance to do that.
Oh, you didn't do the bit, so now it just obviously looks like. Maybe we might get sponsored.
I wonder. Done watching long. Done watching long. Done watching long. Glycine.
Wait, say it as if it's like a rap ad lib.
Done watching long.
Dong Wa Jin Long.
Glycine. Huh. Huh.